Good evening. My presentation tonight is on the Benny and the Jets, giving voice to values ethical discussion in Chapter 3. The overview is that Benny Gordon is a mid-level accountant for a utility supply company. The company is regulated by the state of North Carolina. The rules and regulations dictate that they can only make a 12.5% margin on their utility rates that they charge customers. If they make beyond that, the state can slash the rates that they charge customers. In this case, there's been a couple of inappropriate accounting entries, booking refunds to accounts that are non-operating accounts, so that the operating expenses can remain at 12.5%, so that the utilities company does not get the rate slashed. These entries are inappropriate. Benny realizes that after about 2 years, he decides to do something about it. So we're deciding what we need to do now to be compliant and to resolve this ethical dilemma. The main arguments that Benny could probably anticipate in this situation is that if they correct the journal entries, they will be missing out on significant amounts of revenue. If they have to present correctly the financial statements, the state will likely slash the rates that they can charge the customers. Additionally, it's been going on for some time, and if the company has to make those journal entries, they'll probably have to restate some financials. That'll be considerable work and considerable effort. Additionally, the argument can be made that the audit committee has been okay with it this whole time, so maybe there's not as much of a problem as Benny might think. What's at stake? The organization. There could be fines or loss of licensing if it's found that they were truly fraudulent in their journal entries and that they were deliberately trying to not to be compliant. The executives, they've been allowing this for some years now, and there could be liability for them if this is found to be fraudulent. The customers, if the utilities company truly is not compliant with state regulation, then the customers are being overcharged. And finally, Benny himself, he's been kind of going along with it for 2 years, and there could be some implications for him at this point, since he didn't really say anything about it sooner, and he is a mid-management individual. The levers that can be used, that Benny can use in this situation: the state can audit for compliance at any time, and the journal entries are somewhat easy to come across. Those would be easy to audit, and if the state did do some digging, it would be easy for them to find that there were some inappropriate journal entries made. Any fines or issues with the state or bad publicity would be far more costly than any reduction of revenue. The loss of goodwill amongst customers, investors, and regulators would be far more costly than any restatement. The law is clearly stated in this case, and the company is clearly not compliant, so it wouldn't take tremendous effort to discover if they were audited, and if these journal entries were discovered, they probably wouldn't have much of a foundation to stand on to defend themselves. The final advice for Benny that I would give in this case: he should probably initially obtain legal counsel for himself, since he has been involved in it for several years now. He needs to make sure that he's going about it in the best way possible, and making sure that he's covering any bases and covering himself for any liability, and going about it the right way. Initially, after doing that, he should approach the audit committee, but he needs to first remember that the audit committee, one of the challenges in this situation is that the audit committee is not completely independent. They themselves are members of the board of directors, so the audit committee is not independent in this situation, so he needs to keep that in mind and be careful. He needs to remember that one state audit could find out all of this, and also, since it only would take one state audit and the journal entries are relatively open and easily discoverable, he needs to remember that there's probably a good chance that this is going to be found out eventually, and so he needs to make that argument that it's almost certain that this is going to be found out in the future, and so it's better that they resolve it now instead of waiting until they get to that point. Anyway, that's our presentation. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.